Oligopoly is a market structure where there is just a few firms competing. Commercial jet manufacturing would be an example of this. Boeing and Airbus are the two main competitors in the entire world. The automobile industry, steel manufacturing, and coal mining are other examples. High barriers to entry can enable firms to be able to sustain profits over the long run. Economies of scale is usually the barriers to entry that creates an oligopoly. Industries like mining have relatively high minimum efficient scale. Recall that minimum efficient scale is the least that must be produced to achieve the lowest per unit costs. When minimum efficient scale is large, it can be difficult for a new firm to be able to get into the market and produce at a large enough scale to be able to profitably charge a low enough price to be able to compete with the incumbent firms. Consider the automobile industry, for instance. There are less automobile manufacturers in the entire world than there are restaurants in a mid-sized city. Each manufacturer produces a relatively small number of models, but with each model, it produces a large volume and sells them around the world. The reason that a company like Toyota or Dodge is able to sell a car to you at the price they do is because they have such long runs of production. Tesla is the first American company to try to enter the automobile industry in many decades. Despite the high price of its automobiles, it has struggled to obtain a positive economic profit because it has not been able to produce the volume necessary to bring its per unit cost down to the point comparable with other auto producers. In an oligopoly, the product may or may not be differentiated. Generally, when the product is produced as a final product, it is differentiated. Products like steel and coal that are produced as intermediate goods in the production process are generally homogeneous. Because there are so few firms in the market, there's a high degree of interdependence between the firm's decisions. This makes strategy very important. Consider Coke and Pepsi, for example. They have been very profitable for many decades in part because they have chosen to not compete on the price of the soft drink concentrate that they manufacture. Had one of the companies cut the price of their concentrate, the other company would have followed with a price cut of their own, and profits would have been eroded from the price competition. The interdependence between firm decision-making and oligopoly is illustrated well by studying the economics of firms trying to collude to form a cartel. A cartel is formed when companies collude or work together to maximize joint profits. When they do this, they act jointly like a single-price monopolist, restricting their output in order to increase price and joint profits. A classic example of a cartel today is OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Iran and Saudi Arabia are both members of OPEC. This example illustrates why the countries in OPEC have a hard time sticking to their cartel agreements. Suppose that Iran and Saudi Arabia try to form a cartel in oil production. The table shows their profits at different levels of production. The first profit in each cell is Iran's. The second is Saudi Arabia's. If they form a cartel, they will seek to maximize their joint profits by each limiting their production to a low level. Suppose that Saudi Arabia and Iran have chosen to both keep production low so that their joint profits are maximized. What should Iran do to maximize its profits? Also, what should Saudi Arabia do to maximize its profits? If each chooses low production, they will each have $50 billion of profit. This maximizes their joint profit. However, if Saudi Arabia chooses a low level of production, you can see that Iran can increase its profits to $60 billion if it chooses high production. When Iran cheats on the cartel like this, Saudi Arabia's profits decrease to $30 billion for as long as they continue to choose low production. If Saudi Arabia also chooses high production, both countries will have a profit of $40 billion. The payoffs in the table show that regardless of what the other country is doing, a country can increase its own profits by producing at a high level. So each country has a dominant strategy to cheat on the cartel agreement. Both countries will choose high production. In the United States, it is against the law for businesses to form cartels. However, even if it was not against the law, cartels are difficult to maintain because each individual firm in the cartel has an incentive to cheat to maximize profit. Generally, the first firm to cheat by competing benefits the most, while those that continue to collude with the cartel are hurt the most by those that compete. So not only do firms have an incentive to cheat, they have an incentive to be the first to cheat on the cartel agreement. The fact that firms participating in cartels have a strong incentive to cheat on the cartel agreement by competing is good for economic efficiency, as competition is more efficient than firms acting as a joint monopoly, which is what a cartel does.